Now you're going, okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 6:30, and I'll call our regular City Council meeting to order. It is our tradition to stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, and we invite you to join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have announcements for our upcoming meetings, and we have one proclamation. Regular council meetings are scheduled for Tuesday, October 2nd and October 16th at 6:30 p.m. We have a work session scheduled for Tuesday, October 9th at 6:30 p.m. and a special work session scheduled for Tuesday, October 23rd at 6:30 p.m. And this is for the department budget presentation. Now, I also want our residents to know, and our business folks, that our budget meetings are open to the public, and you'll be able to comment on during these meetings. So the first one is the department budget presentation, and that's Tuesday, October 23rd at 6:30 p.m. Then the next budget meeting, work session, is Tuesday, November 13th at 6:30 p.m. And then the next budget meeting is Tuesday, November 27th at 6:30 p.m. And then we adopt the budget and the levy on Tuesday, December 4th at 6:30 p.m. And all meetings are held here in the council chambers. We have one proclamation, and this is for Family Day, a day to eat dinner with your children. This is a proclamation that we have every year to remind all of us that it is a good thing to have dinner with our children, and here's why. Whereas the use of illegal drugs and the abuse of alcohol and nicotine constitutes the greatest threat to the well-being of America's children, and whereas 15 years of surveys conducted by the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse at Columbia University have consistently found that the more often children and teenagers eat dinner with their families, the less likely they are to smoke, drink, and use illegal drugs. And teenagers who eat dinner with their families 2 times a week or less are twice as likely to drink alcohol and smoke cigarettes compared to teens who have frequent family dinners. And whereas frequent family dining is associated with lower rates of teen smoking, drinking, illegal drug use, and prescription drug abuse, and whereas the correlation between frequent family dinners and reduced risk for teen substance abuse is well documented. And whereas parents who are engaged in their children's lives through such activities as frequent family dinners are less likely to have children who abuse substance. Family dinners have long constituted a substantial pillar of family life in America. Now, therefore, I, Elizabeth Couts, Mayor of the City of Burnsville, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim September 24th, 2012 as Family Day, a day to eat dinner with your children, and urge our citizens to recognize and participate in its observance. Proclaim this 18th day of September 2012. The next item on the agenda is citizens' comments. This is the opportunity for anyone in the audience to address the council on an item that is not on the regular agenda and not an application form that will be coming before us at a future date. Is there anyone who wishes to address the council? Please. And then, Mr. Heike, yes. Yes, over here at the podium. And the microphone is there, and so our residents who are viewing can also have the benefit of seeing you and hearing you.
Thank you, Mayor, and council members, and all the rest of I'm Jim Hetke, and I've spent most of my adult life doing reviews, performance improvement reviews. And the results of those reviews invariably end up in cost reductions. So I thought I might share some expertise with the people of Burnsville. Typically, reviews will run 6 to 9 months, and I would say in your case probably 6 months at the outside. A lot of this outside contracting you do would certainly be well in hand already, so that wouldn't be a challenge. But in any case, I've attached letters to the council here that one of which from Governor Puente. He insisted when he was approached for a review that we should not bother because he has his own internal process reviews. And this is a standard comment. Many people say that. But in his case, he was proved wrong a year later when that bridge came down. You know, I'm a naval engineer, and we don't lose many ships, so, you know, I can't see how something as simple as a bridge should come down. You know, if you do a good analysis and so on, it should never happen. But anyway, I also have a paper in there on reliability growth, just a page or two from it that gives you an idea of my approach. And then our naval process review is the last page, shows 46% reduction in maintenance alone in one of their fleets using the review process. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Mr. Heike, just a clarification, is your reviews that you're proposing, is that charging the city for your process?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And if we find nothing, it costs you nothing.
Thank you.
That sounds fair.
Thank you. Okay. Next.
Mayor, council members, my name is Mike DiGidio, and I'm here to talk about the fees coming up for licensing property for
that
rental.
item is on our agenda. So you can speak when that item is up.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay. Anyone else? An item that is not on the agenda. Anybody who would like to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda? Okay, thank you. We will move on. The next item on the agenda is for emergency items only, and this is additions to the final agenda. Mr. Ebling.
Staff has none to propose, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Members of the council? Okay. Then we'll move on to the consent agenda. This is a grouping of items that's considered to be routine and will be enacted by one vote. However, an item on the consent agenda can be removed for a separate discussion and vote. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes an item on the consent agenda to be removed for a separate discussion and vote? Mr. Ebling?
None from staff, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Members of the council? Councilmember Sherry?
Madam Mayor, I would like to remove item F for separate discussion and vote.
Okay. F. Anyone else? If not, I'd like a motion for the balance, please.
So moved. Second.
Councilmember Keeley makes the motion, second by Councilmember Gustafson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Councilmember Sherry. F is to approve the contract to purchase LED lights and install winter lighting in the heart of the city in the 2012-2014 season. So
The reason I wanted to pull this off is because the public probably already knows, but I'm going to beat this to death, and that is that the cost for this program is underwritten by the Burnsville Community Foundation. And it was Burnsville Community Foundation who really came up with this idea and started it. And by the way, Mr. Ed Delmaro is here, and he is really the bright light behind the whole thing. And so I really want to bring that to everybody's attention, and also encourage people to To help support this program, you can reach out to Mr. Del Moro through the Burnsville Community website, burnsvillefoundation.org. Or if you already have a reminder on your desk from Mr. Del Moro regarding either the winter lighting or Snowflake, please support it. So that's all I have to say. And with that, I would move to approve.
Second.
Councilmember Sherry makes a motion, second by Councilmember Coughlin. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Del Moro, for all of your hard work and for making our community beautiful during the winter season. And now we move on to the regular agenda, and the first item on the regular agenda is the ordinance amending Title III, Chapter 28 regarding rental licensing. Presenting this evening is our Community Development Director, Jenny Faulkner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. This is a team project, a multifaceted department and review that's looked into this for you for the last several months. So besides myself, we have inspections, police department and fire department and licensing that have been very integral in providing the information to you over the last few months. I just want to give a little background for the folks that may be watching, and I know we've talked about this many times, so I'll try to run through it briefly with you. There currently are approximately 8,200 units with rental licenses in the city right now. About 7,450 of those are in multifamily properties, 7,450 in multifamily properties. 750 are individual units, so that would be an individual single-family home, townhome, a condo, something like that. And then we also have another 750 independent and assisted living units in the city. Our current rental ordinance went into effect back in 2005, and at that time the decision was made that we do need a licensing program. However, at the time there was not consensus or need to do inspections or to charge fees. It was a license that was granted to you, and if you lost it and didn't follow the ordinance and the rules, it was yours to lose, I think is what a council member had said one time. So, and there were also some benefits that went along with that. The STAR program, Safer Tenants and Rental, provided some benefits with some extra signage and some other things like that at the time. So this is an item that was first discussed by the council at your all-day retreat, and direction was given to talk about this in 2012. Of course, we have an aging housing stock here in Burnsville, and we continue to have property maintenance issues with multifamily and single-family, some condo units and townhome units throughout the city. It's an ongoing issue that we've seen over the years. It's nothing new. As I said, our review is multi-department, multifaceted review. So on May 15th, we presented some different options and some research of what other cities do. We found there's a vast array of options, and direction was given to proceed to do a modest, what I would say a modest approach, to inspect all the units in the city every 3 years and have license fees cover those costs. Also have reinspection fees, so those properties that demand more services will have to pay for those, and to do annual fire inspections of the common areas of our multifamily buildings. Direction was also given to explore the possibility of hiring contractors. What would that look like? What does that cost? What can we do in that regard? So that was back in May. Then in July, after we started to hear from some members of the public, direction was given to modify the fee structure for multifamily properties to have a lower base fee and then increase the reinspection fees and continue to prepare with the implementation plan. So to that end, we had a meeting on August 8th with the property owners and managers of the multifamily properties. It was well attended. The council chambers here was full. Their main issues had to do with what are we going to be looking for inspections, what is the process, we walked through that with them, what are the fees. Certainly the biggest concerns had to do with the inspections and the fees, and then there was also a couple positive comments about the benefits of inspections and why it's important, and some experiences that some property owners had when they learned things from our fire department, for instance, when they were out there, to the benefit of the property. Then we followed up with you at the August 13th work session on the implementation plan. There's a lot of pre-planning that has to go into this because there's a lot of people to notify with the 8,200 rental units. So we're trying to let people know as soon as possible of potential changes. So we went through the implementation plan, talked about the modified fee schedule at that time, proposal to almost cut in half the multifamily rental fees from $20 to $10 a unit, provide a fee for our townhome complexes that are rented. Also provide some consideration for manufactured home parks where there's a couple of them in town where they actually rent out units themselves, so it's not a multifamily, it's not a single family, so we provided some consideration for them. We also came back with a proposal to do contracted fire inspections. We found a means where we believe that can work and be more cost effective than hiring city staff. And we also went over some of the other public input that we had to date. So I'm not going to go through all the detail, but just want you to know and the public to know this has been a long process, and we've tried to engage all the stakeholders along the way. We had an open house on August 28th. We sent out invitations to all those 750 single-family or single-unit license holders. Ironically or surprisingly, we only heard from 20 people of all the 750 that we sent out. We had about 10, 12 people show up here to the open house and got another 10 emails, I would say, that we responded to. And the overwhelmingly majority of the comments on that had to do with townhouses and condominiums, the fees, because they pay association fees. The exterior maintenance should be taken care of. That shouldn't be an issue. Perhaps the units are smaller if they're condo units, so the inspector isn't going to be there as long as he would be or she would be on a single family home. That was something that we hadn't really thought of when we put together the fees. I don't know that a lot of cities even have that kind of consideration, but it's a reasonable request, so we're proposing to you tonight a modified fee schedule that would reduce the fees for units that are in an association. They'll provide the association and management information on their application form, or for units that someone might have multiple units in the same building, whereas we can cover the inspection at the same time for those multiple units rather than doing separate trips. So we're proposing to reduce that fee to $110 per unit as opposed to $150, and with that increasing the reinspection fee to $185, just trying to balance out the needs. The other big question at our open house and from people that sent in emails had to do with the process. All the licenses right now currently expire at the end of this year. How is this going to work? When will my unit be inspected? What will you be looking for? So we answered all of those questions. And we also have had information out on our website since July with the FAQs and inspection lists. Our goal, as we've told everyone we met with, is to work with property owners. We'll send them a list ahead of time of what we're looking for. We don't want anyone to be surprised. And we've also heard from many people, property owners, who are starting to make improvements because they are preparing for these inspections that are coming. And that's a good thing because these are things that probably should have already been fixed. So we're happy to hear that. Other input, we've worked with the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association on the ordinance modifications early on. They certainly aren't opposed to this, as we've heard from them. It's not in their purview to write letters of support for such ordinances, but we've taken their considerations, made changes, and they are not opposed to the changes before you this evening. We also worked with the Manufactured Home Association, the folks that deal with the manufactured home parks, and they had some good ideas dealing with crime-free multi-housing and whatnot, working with our police department and our work team on this. So we worked with them as well. And as I said, our website's been up and running since July, again, trying to inform people early and often of the changes and try to answer anyone's questions and get their concerns and make changes as we go through this process. So it certainly has been an opportunity for that. So in summary, I've highlighted this in your background. Not a lot of ordinance changes have changed since you first saw this, I think back in May and then again in August. But for those that are watching, the direction is to provide inspections of units every 3 years, do a common area fire inspection of those apartment buildings. There's approximately 90 of them every year. Establish the license and reinspection fees to cover those costs. There's some exemptions that were expanded. This is some issues we were dealing with our current license program. People who are in the military, how do we deal with relatives, snowbirds, that kind of thing. So we've provided exemptions for them. Again, very reasonable, we believe. We're also providing provisions that deal with the issuance and revocation, that deal with property maintenance and code violations. It was kind of a gray area before. Do we do our 10-10-7 property maintenance? Do we have the fire department go out and sign it uninhabitable when someone has a rental license? So we really are very clear with this ordinance. If they don't comply with the code or property maintenance, building, or fire, it's grounds for revocation of their rental license immediately instead of these other means. And also implementing the Minnesota Crime-Free Lease Addendum. That's very important. So if they are in violation and don't oblige to that, that's also grounds for revocation. Along with that, we needed to define a better process for appeal. So what is the process if you're on the other end and you disagree with the city? So we certainly have provided for that, and also for ongoing compliance. If you get a license today, there are certain standards that have to be held up while you have that license in your possession. And then also the process for revocation, suspension, and reinstatement. That's kind of been a gray area in the current ordinance, and so now we're laying out the framework for that. And then the fees, real quickly, what we're proposing to you to make this all work: $130 a building, $10 a unit for the multifamily properties, $80 and $10 a unit for the townhome complex. That's a complex that's all rental, like an apartment building, but they're townhome style. $150 for an individual unit. That's an individual that may have a property or a townhouse or a condo or single family. $110 if they happen to be in an association or if they're in the same building, because there's some efficiencies there. The manufactured home, if they're owned and rented by the park, the base fee for the park and $40, and they're agreeable to that. And then the reinspection fee is $185 per visit. That would be the third time we're out there. First time we're out there is included. One follow-up is included. Any time after that, they would have to pay. So with that, our recommendation to you is that you adopt the proposed ordinance changes with a review after 3 years. We feel once all the units are inspected, we'll have a good handle on what actually is going on inside and outside of all of our units and can make any changes as necessary to the ordinance, to the fees, to tiering, whatever we'll want to do. And then with that, the next steps after tonight's meeting, assuming things would go forward, is you'll see the numbers in the budget and the fee schedule that will come before you at a later date. We will send a letter to all license holders in December telling them how their license will be implemented, and we're going to go to a quarterly basis with 8,900 units. We can't get to them all at one. They're all due right now at one time, so we're going to spread that out over a quarter. So they'll be due in March, June, September, or December, so we'll let them know. And then that will revisit options in 3 years. I'll certainly stand for any questions, as will any member from our work group.
Councilmember Koff, you want to hit your button? I'm going to go to Councilmember Sherry first.
I have a couple of questions, Ms. Faulkner. You mentioned the townhome associations and a different fee structure for those individual units. Who's responsible for the exteriors? Are the exteriors inspected as well? And then is the association held accountable for that? Do they pay for an inspection fee? Or do they pay an inspection fee for that?
Councilmember Sherry, we will inspect the exteriors of them, but if there's any issues, in most cases, the association is responsible for the exterior maintenance, the grounds, the building, the siding, the roof,
Right.
that kind of thing. So we won't charge them an extra inspection. That'll be part of when we go out there. If there's an issue and we have to go back, we'll work in concert with the association and the property owner.
But the association is being held accountable then?
I think they will be part of our way to get resolution. It's really going to depend on what those bylaws are, I think, for each property. But the property owner is responsible for their property. I don't know if,
But-
Soren, you have anything to
But
add?
do you know what I'm driving at, and that is
$185.
if you own a unit, you pay an association fee for the exterior maintenance.
Yes.
Let's say the exterior maintenance is not being done. Who's being held accountable then if it needs repair?
Our attorney is going to answer that
Yeah.
question because HOAs are governed under a certain law, and I live in an HOA.
Yes.
Yes.
The first thing we'd have to do, not to dodge the question, but is to look at what the HOA says.
Yeah.
I've seen HOAs where the actual owner of the unit isn't allowed to do the work, where the HOA says
Yes.
we have to do it. And then
Yeah.
there at times have been discrepancies on whether the work really needs to be done. So we would have to take a look at what the HOA document itself says. Now, in the event we inspected it, the property maintenance code that you're enforcing, I'm assuming if it failed a property maintenance code provision, that it would be probably in failure of any terms and conditions within that HOA document. So at that point, you would look to the HOA primarily, but the property owner is still there having to work with you to allow you on that property and allow you to do the work too.
I understand all that, but
Okay.
I guess what I'm concerned about is how can you enforce compliance when you're dealing with a homeowners association?
They're an entity just like anyone else.
Okay, so that brings me back to my original question. Then they would be fined, or they would be that they would be held accountable.
To the extent, I think what our attorney's saying, to the extent
Because
that their bylaws would
I understand
require.
they have different bylaws. I'm concerned that this is something that maybe it's not as big a problem as I fear.
In our experience with the townhome associations, and Scott or BJ can speak to this too, but we have less issues with exterior maintenance because they are usually taken care of. People pay dues,
Okay.
and it's less of an issue.
There was one condo association near where I live where it fell into terrible disrepair, and there wasn't enough money set aside to take care of the exterior, and they wound up having to get some outside help to get that done. And this is what I just see, that this is this concerns me.
Councilmember Sherry, would you like an amendment in that so that you can take care of the HOA? That if the property is not maintained, it is the responsibility of the HOA, because all of the other property owners who live in that HOA are paying dues every month for the maintenance of that property.
But they may not be paying enough.
Then that's where we can find the HOA. Ms. Faulkner.
I would just add to that, that is an issue that could be outside of rental licensing, because if we have a property maintenance issue right now and they're owner occupied and they've got code issues or property maintenance issues, we're dealing with that right now outside of rental licensing.
Okay, but could you look into that then?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, and then I have a follow-up, if I may, or a separate question, actually.
Councilmember Sherry.
If the license is revoked of a multifamily housing complex, if a license is revoked, do the tenants then have to move out?
Councilmember Sherry, members of the council, when a license is revoked, it comes back before you for a decision on what that action would be. If it's per building, per unit, it depends on the extent of the violation and how many people are impacted. In the most recent case of the Country Village apartments, there were fire code issues that were impacting the safety of everybody in those buildings because of the fire doors. It wasn't just one or two units. There were other issues in those units, but that was the major overriding issue that caused the entire buildings and properties to have to be vacated.
Thank you. Okay. Councilmember Coughlin.
Jenny, I need a clarification on that. If my understanding is if you revoke a license of a particular unit, that would terminate the person's right to give somebody else that space. It would be untenable as a matter of law. So maybe not. So I'm just looking, we should get a clarification. I see our council shaking his head as well, yes. So that if there's like a standalone townhouse and you revoke the license, that's as a matter of law an untenable unit. So to answer your question. Secondly, I still didn't totally understand and just need further clarification. Part of our goal among our many goals for this moving forward with this ordinance was to have it pay for itself. And part of that was that we're going to employ 3.5 full-time equivalents to do inspections, and then we're going to private contract out the fire piece of the deal. And what I want to make sure is a couple questions. First of all, as you've looked and reworked the dollars, I assume that you still are reasonably confident that it will pay for itself. Is that correct?
Yes, Councilmember Coughlin, members of the council, as we've made modifications here or there, we've had to increase the reinspection fee. The reinspection, or the volatile piece in our budget, is about 25% of the overall budget, so 75% of the costs are covered by the flat fees. So there is some volatility there, and the unknowns based on the compliance rates, and we want people to comply, but we'll know as year one goes by what that gap is, if it's worse than what we are estimating or better than what we're estimating. But we certainly have accounted for it with our estimates, to answer your question.
And then just for further clarification, On the 185, so if there is a violation of the Townhouse Association, did we come to some agreement that the entity then will be responsible to pay the $185 fine?
Ms. Faulkner?
It was unclear to me, your answer was unclear to me.
Mr. Maddox?
Well, is there an agreement with them? No. Is that what our ordinance provides for? Yes. I don't know if are you talking about the reinspection fee?
Correct. So if there's a siding issue, I mean, obviously, I just want a clarification that I didn't totally understand whether the final statement was the 185 would be assessed against the association or not. I didn't understand that.
Ms. Faulkner?
Yeah, I think that depends on what the bylaws say again and who's responsible for what. So we may have an association where there's single-family detached homes where each homeowner is responsible for the exterior. Think of the ones on Travelers Trail or maybe like Wildwood or something. But to the extent we can, yes, we will.
So for further clarification, your intent is to try to apply the fine to either
Yes.
the individual owner or the association, as the case may be.
Yes.
So my last comment is you did an excellent job doing your presentation, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Faulkner? Yes, we worked on this for a long time, and I want to thank you for all of the time that you and your staff and the team have sat and worked through all of the issues with the property owners. And it's a testament to all of that tonight we do not have people from the Multi-Housing Association, or because we've seen them in all the other meetings, or from the Fabricated Housing Association. So
We sent them the agenda and an invite as well to be here.
that's
so-
right. And they've been at other meetings, and you've worked through all of these issues with them, that they must have been satisfied with everything and reading the amended ordinance and the fee schedule, because they're not here. But they were here with all the other hearings we've had throughout the year. So thank you, Jenny, to you and everyone else. Yes. Councilmember Sherry?
Yes, I just want to thank you on behalf of the public. Today, there was a street crew out in front of my house repairing a pothole. And there were several of the neighbors who came out and thanked them for repairing the pothole. I don't think there are a lot of citizens that are going to come around and thank you for doing this, but I think they will see the benefit of this, and thank you very, very much on their behalf, because it's just tremendous and very difficult work, and I know you've pulled together a wonderful team to do this, so thanks so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Keeley?
I want to just chime in on the part of this process about listening to the affected parties. I think many times we all read in the newspaper, cities or counties or state pass laws or statutes or ordinances, and there's a lot of complaining because people weren't heard. They felt they brought up very valid concerns and were rebuffed. And the impression is that government can be a freight train coming through, doing what it wants and clearing the path that it wants. And I'm very proud to be part of a city that has staff like yourself and the rest of your team that actually took to heart everything that was brought to the table. And the end result was an ordinance that molded along the way and addressed all of their concerns. And to the mayor's point, they're not here tonight complaining because we have big ears, and this was a very good work on everyone's part, so thank you very much.
Councilmember Gustafson?
I also want to thank the staff for what you've done. It's, as you all know, I was part of the original ordinance when this was, and I think you've met the spirit of the original ordinance. By lowering the fees, listening to our residents, listening to the building owners, I think we're in a position where we're still kind of where we were, except it's going to cost them a little bit more, but how do I put this? We were given really good evidence that we have to be proactive, unfortunately, and which brought us to this point. And so the free license had to go away because of that evidence that came to us from a particular building out there. I think you've done a good job working with the building managers and the owners and that, and so thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chief, to the captain, police and fire, to our inspectors, thank you. And You do great work. Thank you. Okay, now we do have one resident or building owner who would like to speak. Please come forward and give us your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Mike DeGidio, and I own 8 condominiums that are licensed rental units in Ridgeview, right across the street there. And I really think that the ordinance is good. I think that I really think they did a lot of good work on putting it together. But the final outcome for me is that I own these units, and they're apartment units. They're like 19 feet by 39 feet with living room at one end, 2 bedrooms at the other end, and a bathroom and kitchen in the middle. And I own to the floor. I own the carpet. I own the paint on the walls, but that's as far as it goes. I don't own the sheetrock. I don't own the floor. I just, I own within the unit. And when you put it all together, because I own 8 units on a flat fee, I wind up paying $880 with no fire inspection fee. Where somebody who owns a 50-unit building would pay $780, less than I pay for 8 units, and they get a fire inspection on top of it. And somehow I think that doesn't work. And I think where it happened is when you put together this inspection program, it was broken down into 2 categories. One was multifamily housing, and then everything was bunched together into single-family rental. Well, there's a difference in single-family rental. It takes a lot more to inspect a house with a basement and a garage, and you're doing all the outside, and you got a heating plant and all of the utilities that have to be checked out. In my unit, you don't have that. You have everything on one floor, small area. Take a look here, take a look there, and you're done. We've broken single-family units includes homes, townhomes, which could be 1 or 2 stories with or without a basement. Manufactured homes in a manufactured rental facility, but apartments are, they're the simplest, the smallest, and I think the fee is too high for that particular category.
Okay. Were you at the meetings that
I
were held?
was. Yeah.
Okay. And you had this conversation with our staff and the others?
Oh, I did, and they did, at that time it was projected to be 150, which would have been even higher.
It was higher because we saw those
And the
original
figures I
fees.
gave you is with the 110,
Yes.
and I just think, I think it's too high.
Okay.
That's 110 a year, that's basically what we're covering is an inspection, one inspection every 3 years, or $330 for an inspection of this one little unit. It's just the same inspection. Sometimes I rent units to people who are in Section 8, and the county comes in and does an inspection, and they do a thorough inspection, and they look at the outside too, and I've had to have
So you're approved to receive vouchers?
on some of my units.
Okay.
If people apply to me that way, and I rent to them.
And then you have to apply to the county to be a recipient. One of the
Well, I work with them, and so if somebody comes and they're on Section 8 with a voucher, and they come to me and I rent to them, the county, they have a good standing with me, and I with them, and so then they just sign a contract with me, a separate contract, and they come and inspect my units on an annual basis. And they have required the association to do work on the outside, peeling paint and things like that.
That is one of the things, because if you're going to be one of the people who will receive vouchers, you're going to have to comply with those inspections as well, because you're getting subsidy,
Right.
and you have to meet those regulations. and you have to pay that, and that's part of that business that you enter into. And so, but let me hear. I have other council members who want to ask you questions. Councilmember Keeley.
I just want to clarify, all 8 of your units under this ordinance, in my interpretation, would not be inspected every year. That over the 3 years, they would
Over
all
a 3-year period, once every 3 years.
3 years.
once every 3 years. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So each, they might do 2 and whatever, but it's over a 3-year period, so you're paying it once over a 3-year period.
No, it's an annual fee.
The annual license.
It's an annual fee,
The annual license.
but inspected once every 3 years.
Oh, gotcha. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got correct. Sorry. I got 2 twisted up. So in your meetings with staff, what did you propose as an alternative in situations like yours where you've got a very small unit, very, 1 floor, very easy, et cetera, as a
I didn't
mechanism
I didn't
to-
want to make a proposal to them because I knew they had done a lot of work on it. I just brought up that I considered it to be really excessive.
Mhm.
I mean, if I have a unit with a building with 50 units versus 8 units, and I can get by for less inspection fees, somehow that's not right. It seems like the people who just have a few single units are paying a disproportionate amount, and it's easy to send something out to people and say, well, you're renting out your house, you got to pay $150. Well, it's only $150, but I wound up with number of units that I can't get rid of.
Okay. Mr. Ebling?
Madam Mayor and council members, Ms. Faulkner might be able to add to this, but I think the issue here is that the ordinance doesn't envision condominiums to typically be rental units.
That's right.
They're just about just about always owner occupied, and that is the intent of the original zoning that was put into place when those permits were issued. They were intended to be owner occupied. Now, we fully realize that there are situations where condominiums are being rented, and that's a product of a lot of different factors. But then the staff is working with individual owners, which is different than working with one owner for many, many units. We're now working with all kinds of individual owners. The administrative effort goes up. The inspection effort goes up because we have to coordinate and schedule every inspection separately and so on. So it really isn't, for our purposes and in terms of the way that we incur costs in these efforts, it's not the same as an apartment. It's not nearly the same as an apartment. Now, I think that your point was well made and probably was part of the influence for saying, yes, there needs to be some recognition of that, thus the reduction of the originally proposed 150 down to 110. But I think at the core of this is the sense that condominiums were never intended to be rental units. So, and reality is we know that some of them are.
Yeah,
But
actually,
that's not the
Ridgeview,
council's desire.
I believe Ridgeview was originally built
As condominiums.
as condominium.
As condominiums.
Yes.
It is. As condominiums
Mine-
back in the 70s.
Yeah, well, I've owned property there since '85, and my understanding was it was originally built as rental, but they sold them off as condominiums.
No. You might want to take a look at the plat
Okay.
and the plan unit development agreement.
But the decks and bylaws always provided for, and originally they provided for 120 units to be rental units within there. And that's in the decks and bylaws. And they've changed the number of units up and down, the board of directors, they have 9 people on their board, and they've changed it up and down.
So you don't live on the property,
Not anymore, no.
but you have been buying units in that property
Originally-
and renting them.
Well, originally, I bought units and I remodeled and sold them, and then I got into a tax situation, where I kept a few and planned on selling them later. And of course, now I'm caught where they're worth a quarter of what they were. Condominiums took a big hit, so I don't want the units at this point. But the only thing I can do is keep renting them. And I'm running into a situation that the city council has nothing to do with it, but the board of directors there decided that since there's other fees coming in, they should get $100 a year too. So
Sir, our intent is to get those condominiums back to home ownership
Oh, yeah.
and also the single family. But we also recognize the economy as it is, and people have moved or so forth, that that's where it is. But at the same time, we need to make sure that the city is well maintained and the product within the city is also well maintained.
Mhm.
And so,
I agree with you. I really see the sense in the ordinance.
yeah, okay.
And I've always complied with that, and, you could even check with the county. They'll tell you that when they come through my units, they're always perfect.
Well, I'm glad that you participated in the process, and our staff heard you and reduced the fee. And so, is there anything else, Ms. Faulkner, that you want to add?
No, Madam Mayor, Craig's comments were summary of why we reduced the fees. We did hear from Mike at our meetings and whatnot, so and he did bring that to our attention. It's unfortunate, I think, that he happens to have 8 units. That's very rare, and it's hard, as you know, to craft an ordinance or a fee schedule that applies to every single situation. There may come a day next year when he sold a couple units, and he only has 6.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult to come up with something that works for every situation. So we try to accommodate by reducing the fee because that helped the most number of people, and they're satisfied with that, as we've heard from some of them. But because he has 8 units, without making it 0, it's going to be difficult to make him happy with that.
Well, I didn't expect 0, but I certainly expected it to be less than if I owned a 50-unit building. There's almost no comparison. But thank you for hearing me.
Thank you for coming in. Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else who wants to be heard? If not, members of the council, Councilmember Gustafson.
Oh, I just would like to be the first to make the motion to approve this ordinance. It's kind of, I started my career at this council with this ordinance, and I'm ending my career at this council with this ordinance, so move to approve.
Second.
Councilmember Gustafson makes the motion, second by Councilmember Sherry. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Thank you. And again to staff, thank you very much. Now, this is another big job that's been going on and since 2000 and before 2000, and this is the approval to the amendment to our zoning ordinance to delete provisions related to the R3C Regional Center Residential District and amend the official zoning map to rezone several properties from R3Z to mixed-use district, rezoning 2 properties from R3C to P, which is park, and rezone 2 properties from B3 to general business to mix. And our planner, Deb Garros, has been working on this for a long time, and also with our comprehensive plan. And now she's cleaning up all of this and making it all work for us. Ms. Garros.
Thank you, council members. I'm going to try to bear with me. There we go. Let me get the item up before you. This particular application is a culmination of a lot of work, and it is related to the city's comprehensive plan, which was updated a couple of years ago. And this is an implementation item of that comprehensive plan. The zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance implement a majority of the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. In this, we have 2 actually separate actions that we are requesting council to consider this evening. There are actually 4 ordinances before you. 2 of them relate to the text amendment, and that's to make a change in the wording, the language of the zoning ordinance itself, and there is a summary ordinance that goes along with that. The R3C zoning district is the zoning district that has been in place for a number of years, actually probably about 20 years, maybe even a little longer than that. It applies to areas such as Fairview Ridges, planned unit development, and then also some of the other apartment buildings and properties within the city, primarily located along transit routes and high traffic roads, including County Road 5, South Cross Drive. Am I losing you?
Tried to fix it.
Trying to fix your...
I think on the, I don't know if you can see this on the screen, but the areas in general are the Fairview Ridges campus, some areas along McAndrews and Nicollet, and then also the Valley Ridge senior apartment property, and these properties out off of 143rd, which would be like Chancellor Manor, and some of the apartment complexes out there. Those properties have been identified as basically high-density residential or some type of residential, and that's what the R3 district was intended to accomplish. Very high densities, and also to have these facilities along the roads that had the transit services to be able to provide for those. With the comprehensive plan, we adopted a mixed land use, which is intended to, for lack of a better explanation, is kind of take the ideas of heart of the city in a much smaller context and apply them to certain areas of the city where there is the ability to incorporate mixed uses, including some high-density residential or residential components, along with some commercial, office, retail, and entertainment types of things. The district itself, the zoning district, to implement that mixed land use was created last year in 2011, and the zoning ordinance includes the mixed zoning district, and basically it takes into account some of the uses, or the majority of the uses, from the R3C district and other commercial and entertainment type uses that we thought, or that the city thought would be compatible to kind of a neighborhood mixed development. What this is, at this point in time, is actually changing the zoning ordinance to remove that R3C zoning district, because it really is not needed any longer now that the mixed zoning district has been adopted. This element also includes, and this is the second amendment that we're looking at, making changes actually to the zoning map and actually rezoning some 90 properties from R3C primarily to a mixed district. In terms of these properties, for the most part, they are also covered by planned unit development zoning, and it's actually the planned unit development that identifies how the property can be used. The underlying zone gives the kind of base information available for that. Staff is not anticipating any of these districts or any of these areas to redevelop immediately. What this allows is the opportunity to incorporate some mixed use into these areas, provided they meet the ordinance requirements. So we are implementing the comprehensive plan, kind of making the final changes. The only reason that we did not go through this process last year when we adopted the mixed district is really because it just takes a lot of work and effort to be able to notify all of the property owners, post them for rezoning, etc. So we're doing that at this point. Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on this. We did send out letters to all of the affected property owners identifying what the zoning change meant for them. There is really very little practical implications to the property owners by the rezoning, and we ended up with only one person who attended the public hearing, and they just had a question about some city land that is proposed to be changed from R3C to Park. With that, the Planning Commission made a recommendation to Council to consider approval of both ordinances, and there were no conditions attached. With that, I can stand for questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Garros? No. I think we've seen this document, we read the document, approved the document, and now it's the implementation of this one piece of the document, and this was very laborious work. And Ms. Garros, I want to thank you for all of the work that you have done on this implementation of our plan, of our comprehensive plan. So thank you for all of your hard work.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Nicely done.
Council.
Okay. Any questions? If not, a motion to adopt the ordinance. All three, or there are four ordinances? Three.
Actually, Mayor, there are
And
the two main
map.
ordinances and the summary.
And the summary.
Yes.
Yeah, to adopt the ordinance and the summary.
Move
And the
it.
map is included.
So moved.
Councilmember Sherry makes the motion, second by Councilmember Coughlin. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. And the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will now recess the Burnsville City Council meeting so the Economic Development Authority meeting can convene. President Sherry.
I would like to call the meeting of the Economic Development Authority to order and let the record show that all members are present. And as soon as my iPad catches up with me, here we go. Well, no, it didn't catch up with me. Hold on. Are there any additions to the agenda?
None from staff, Madam President.
We're maxing out the capacity.
Yeah, I
of the
know.
iPad
I
with
know.
all
It's
the,
just, it's
size of files
overloaded
and
here.
Would you like the hard copy?
No, I got it. Thanks. Is there, would anybody, any other commissioners like to make an addition to the agenda? Then I would consider a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Coughlin, or Commissioner Coughlin, and made the motion, and Commissioner Keeley made the seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Then we'll move on to the regular agenda, which is a resolution to approve the Fourth Amendment to contract for private redevelopment between the Burnsville Economic Development Authority and Burnsville Crossing LLC. And with us to talk about this is Economic Development Director Skip Nienhaus. Mr. Nienhaus.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. The item before you pertains to property located at Burnsville Parkway and Nicollet Avenue in the heart of the city. It's property owned by Wellington Management. Currently, that property, we are seeing the final stages of construction of the CVS pharmacy. The development contract between the property owner and the EDA calls for the development of the pharmacy and the development of a 5,000 square foot office/retail building. The completion in the contract was this month of this year. Obviously, the 5,000 square foot building is not going to happen. There's a couple of things that have caused that. First of all, if you've driven by the site, you notice that the part of the site that would have this 5,000 square foot building on it has been used as the staging area for the last year for the construction of the pharmacy. Second of all, in the economic conditions we've had for the last few years, it is virtually impossible for a developer to get financing for a spec building, which means you need a major tenant or a couple of tenants prior to building your building. With the vacancy rate that is occurring not only in Burnsville but across the Twin Cities, if you're looking for office or retail space, small space, the type of space you'd go for in a 5,000 square foot building, you obviously do not have to wait to have a building built for you. You can move right in. Because of those conditions, the developer is asking to amend the completion date of the contract to March of 2015. The Economic Development Commission reviewed this item last week at their meeting. Their recommendation is that the EDA approve the amendment. Staff also recommends that the EDA approve the amendment, and staff would stand for questions.
Go ahead. Yes, Commissioner Couts.
I just, Madam President, I just wanted to say that this particular developer has worked very well with us on a whole lot of things. And as stated by Mr. Nienhaus, it is very difficult economic times that we are in. And I trust that when things get better, Mr. Wellington will build that building.
Any other questions for Mr. Nienhaus? Anyone? With that, I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Commissioner Keeley makes a motion. Commissioner Coughlin seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Hearing none, the motion is approved, and I believe that's all the business we have. Would someone
Motion
move
to
adjourn?
close.
Second.
Coughlin and Keeley, and we are adjourned. And back to the council meeting.
Thank you, Councilmember Sherry. I now reconvene the Burnsville City Council meeting, and we are at miscellaneous. And the one item on miscellaneous is the update of the Lindahl properties. Ms. Faulkner?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I can report to you at this meeting that our inspections department has been out and a whole nother building has passed inspection. So that means 5 buildings have passed to date and 1 is left. And I will leave it to the applicant and the representative to update you on the status of that last building if you're interested.
Okay. So I just have a question. Are we still on track, Mr. Martinson? Okay. Oh, very good.
I have a question for Mr. Mulkerson.
Okay.
Yes.
Councilmember Sherry.
I have a question,
Okay, please come to.
Have you been leasing these units? Are people moving into the buildings?
I know that it has been occurring, but I'm not involved in the details.
Mr. Martinson may have some information. Yeah. Would you want to come to, so our folks at home can see you?
And for the record, my name is Bruce Malkerson.
Malkerson.
1235 Chestnut Boulevard.
Okay.
Shakopee.
Yes.
Jim Martinson, freshly moved to Savage. I don't know my address yet.
2 weeks ago.
You've been too busy working and making sure that you meet expectations.
Yeah.
At the moment, they're currently offering rentals. I believe there are 5 or 6 rental applications that have been approved out of the, I believe, 48 or 60 units that have been approved for rental. So it is currently advertised and being offered for rental to the general public.
If I may, some follow-up questions. Are any of the prior tenants applying to move back in?
There has been some interest. My end of the business is the reconstruction of the property.
Right.
I have some involvement with the rental. I have been approached by several people prior that are interested in moving back in, and some of the employees of the Lindalls are also working on the project and lived prior on the property and are interested in moving back in. I don't have any knowledge that any of these have been approved.
My concern comes from some people who have followed this very closely, and they have asked whether or not the people who were evicted because of the conditions there would be able to move back in without having to pay a security deposit, which was not returned to them.
I am unaware of any of those issues.
Well, and another concern I have is that I do know that there are people who have sought rentals in other rental apartments in Burnsville, and they've told their managers that their security deposits were not returned to them. There are a great number of people in the city of Burnsville and beyond who dug into their pockets to help these people under those situations, and they're very, very anxious that the prior tenants be treated fairly in this manner regarding the security deposits. I understand your end of the business is the construction, but perhaps Mr. Mulkerson, who's making notes now, and I'm glad you are, you can look into that, because I think it's an issue of fairness, not just to the prior tenants who were so rudely removed from their homes, but also to those people who really dug deeply to help them financially.
Your Honor, members of the council, I will ask my client to address that by the next meeting.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Melkerson. And thank you, Mr. Martinson, for delivering. I like deliverables. And so you're doing well. So how many more weeks before the last building?
Definitely will beat the December 31st deadline. There's some information that came to light with some damage to the second floor subfloor that might extend out my personal goal, which was the middle of November, somewhat beyond it. Maybe some exposure, maybe some more funds have to be spent on the 12525 building. I'm gathering that information from Scott McGowan actually after the meeting.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good, and we appreciate that you come and give us an update, and you're delivering. Thank you. Councilmember Keeley, and then Councilmember Coughlin.
Well, Madam Mayor, I think I want to propose that we move the requirement for updates to once a month based on the progress and the fact that there's only one building left. There's a cost factor and a time factor for all those folks to come to every meeting, and I think we're sufficiently at a point where I'm confident they're going to deliver, and there's plenty of time between now and the end of December to do that, and we'll have a few more meetings to be able to get an update. So I would suggest, and I'm proposing, that we just get an update once a month from here on out.
Okay, Councilmember Coughlin and then Councilmember Sherry.
I just want to thank Dr. Lindahl also for attending the meetings, and that's what I want to do. Go ahead.
Councilmember Sherry.
Well, I have no objection to Councilmember Keeley's proposal. However, I would like an answer at the next meeting regarding my inquiry about the security deposits.
Well, that'll be in our October 1st meeting, so they can make the one meeting then. And then the 1st of November. So I'm okay because I'm trusting that you're going to stay on track, and then our staff will let us know. So we will expect you then in the first meeting of October and the first meeting of November, and hopefully you will have great reports to give us. Okay, and thank you so much, Mr. Melkerson and Mr. Martinson and Dr. Lindahl. Thank you for being here and making sure that the integrity of your words are recognized and realized. Very good. Good. What Mr. Martinson is saying for our listening audience is that he thanks our inspection department for the work that you've been doing in working together with them. Okay, thank you. Members of the council, there are no other items to come before us, and so a motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
Councilmember Coughlin makes the motion, second by Councilmember Keeley. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Good night, and thank you for being with us.